Freedom's Cause, Vignette 7, titled Acceptable to Unacceptable. As noted, while undeniable truths and truths rendered self-evident were the means by which the harsh issues of the day were overcome, the means by which people moved forward in sustaining that which they had achieved was by developing a more mature national mindset. For void of this growth in maturity, none of these issues could have been properly resolved. This day you are being introduced to undeniable truths that pertain unto the doctrine of total inclusion. Once you hear and believe in all this witness has to reveal, you will hear from the second witness truths rendered self-evident. But this brings up the question, what then is the comfortable cultural mindset you presently hold? What is the more mature national mindset that is requisite you develop, which, if you fail to fulfill, will render your capacity to overthrow the power of the doctrine of total inclusion of no lasting meaning? They are called acceptable weaknesses, and they abide within your marriage. You know what form they take, and you know the negative behavior you've taken on, so thereby you may be able to live with them. For it seems your only choices are to either learn to live with them or condemn your spouse for having them. You are correct in that you do not have the right to condemn your spouse for having such weaknesses. The reason for this being, within your marriage there is no such thing as a husband's or a wife's acceptable weaknesses. There are only those that abide within the marriage. Thus, although you do not have the right to condemn, neither do you have the right to condone. The only right you have is to serve. In regards to these weaknesses, it is for you to recognize. Until now, it was not requisite they were dealt with, for as noted, it would have been beyond the emotional strength of your progenitors. If said effort had been made, the resulting failure would have led to unjustifiable fault finding. But, as noted, line upon line and precept by precept, your progenitors have endowed you with the maturity required to look upon and resolve said weaknesses. Thus, they have endowed you with the capacity to take on that mindset via which the doctrine of total inclusion can be properly resolved, which mature capacity is the true national treasure they have bequeathed unto you. For if you refuse to overcome said weaknesses, then the degree of happiness you can obtain within your marriage will hit a glass ceiling. You may obtain greater happiness via your work, church duties, etc., but that had within your marriage, between you as husband and wife, cannot increase. Thus, the only means open to you by which your marriage can grow in happiness is by you adhering unto this golden rule, that within your marriage there is no such thing as a husband's or a wife's acceptable weaknesses. There are only those that abide within the marriage, stipulating you are equally responsible to help one another see and resolve said weaknesses, to do so in a timely manner by means of an appropriate effort, in that you seek out and adhere unto the tutelage of the truth, so thereby you may overcome said weaknesses. Doing so via means of extending the hand of friendship one unto another, in that you serve one another via means of persuasion, long-suffering, gentleness, and meekness, by love unfeigned, by kindness and pure knowledge. In this it is requisite you recognize I am not advocating a specific doctrine of happiness, for as noted, I have no authority to do so. What I am advocating are principles that have to do with the doctrine of freedom. For is it not evident to you that although this day all are upheld by the laws of the land in having access to life and liberty, it is still requisite you do the work via which you turn weaknesses into strengths, that you turn a lack of skills and talents into the required amount, so thereby you might acquire work, that you turn a lack of abilities into the required amount, so thereby you can take proper care of whatsoever wealth and property you garner via means of your labors. In this, it is for you to recognize overcoming said weaknesses via turning them into strengths is to advance in your freedom. What you make of said freedom is then in your hands. For if you choose a doctrine of happiness whereby you destroy whatsoever benefits you can derive from having turned these weaknesses into strengths, then you have put to no good purpose the freedom your Creator has endowed you with. Thus, the idea that to uphold yourself in the inalienable right to pursue after happiness means you must develop skills and talents via which you may stoically endure your spouse's acceptable weaknesses is a principle at odds with itself. For the only means by which you can sanction your spouse's misconduct towards you is via hardening your heart towards said conduct, as only thereby can you keep their inappropriate conduct from inflicting ongoing hurts upon you. The only means whereby you can continue to sanction them in their ongoing misconduct is via ignoring the negative effect it has upon others, a capacity you can only purchase via hardening your heart to an even greater degree, which stipulates to the degree you harden your heart is to the degree to which you limit your capacity to obtain happiness via your marriage. In this, it is requisite you recognize, from generation to generation, your progenitors were overcoming weaknesses all have in regards to our capacity to uphold all in their inalienable right to life and liberty. In their so doing, they have been cleansing the human family of said weaknesses. In their so doing, they have step by step been converting these weaknesses into strengths by increasing our capacity to draw closer to one another and find joy therein. Thus, they are not the authors of our acceptable weaknesses. Rather, via their willingness to adhere unto the tutelage of the truth, they are the authors of the happiness we are presently capable of receiving into our lives. For the softness of heart you presently hold is an endowment you have received from them. Stipulating the softness of heart you hold causes you to feel aggrieved via your spouse's acceptable weaknesses in a manner unknown to your progenitors, as the softness of heart you hold is far more attuned to such hurts than was theirs. Thus, to live with said weaknesses and have a successful marriage in like manner as your progenitors, you feel you must harden your heart. In this you fail to realize the harsh issues of their day called upon them to soften their heart in a manner no longer required of you. But via their resolving of said issues, you have the softness of heart to resolve the harsh issues of your day, via doing that which was beyond their capacity, to resolve the acceptable weaknesses within your marriage. Therefore, the attitude you hold towards the acceptable weaknesses had within your marriage is not one you created. Rather, it marks the degree of progress your progenitors have achieved in softening the human heart via means of adhering unto the tutelage of the truth. Therefore, in like manner as your progenitors, you are called upon to continue in said labor via undergoing within your marriage a change in mindset in regards to what you have viewed as acceptable to being recognized as unacceptable. You are also asked to undertake this change by the same means as your progenitors, via truths having been rendered undeniable to you. The dictates of your conscience tell you it is the right thing to do. For if you refuse to deal with said weaknesses via adhering unto said dictates, if instead you harden your heart towards the truth, then you will pass this comfortable cultural mindset onto your posterity, stipulating their marriages will also function by means of acceptable weaknesses. Thus, even though truths rendered undeniable and self-evident come forth, and the harsh issues associated with the doctrine of total inclusion are resolved thereby, as this glass ceiling will remain firmly in place, it will lead to the following inescapable consequence. Within 3 to 4 generations after the harsh issues associated with the doctrine of total inclusion have been resolved, they will fully resurface, and in so doing lead to the fall of your Declaration of Independence. The reason for this is simple. If your posterity cannot grow in happiness via means of traditional marriages, they will eventually turn to alternative means. Said means will be via those forms of pleasure associated with the doctrine of total inclusion. Thus, you either fulfill the duty that is before you by developing the requisite national maturity to properly resolve said weaknesses within your marriage, else foredoom your posterity. For if you refuse to accept this responsibility, you owe to your posterity to recognize and overcome said weaknesses. You relinquish the political initiative to those who sustain the doctrine of total inclusion, in that you allow them to define what today's comfortable cultural mindset is that needs to be overcome, and what the more mature national mindset is that must take its place. For like it or not, want it or not, this is already transpiring, and because it is compounding the difficulty of the challenges you face. For this day the lie mocks the truth, in that it states that via what the eye can see and the ear can hear, it is obvious that open marriages, bisexual relationships, same-gender couples, etc., have the same right to be married as mixed-gender couples who function in complete fidelity to one another. That via what the eye can see and the ear can hear, it's merely the act of a mature adult to recognize the drug culture has the same right to be fully licensed as alcohol. Via this means, those who sustain the doctrine of total inclusion are able to state, you who oppose the more wholesome national mindset they advocate, do so as you adhere unto outdated, bigoted religious beliefs you whitewash via terminology such as love the sinner but hate the sin. They are being endowed by the lie with the ability to state you cannot hide the corrosive nature of your hate via a bandage of love. For the immaturity of your religious teachings must in due time foster a mindset in line with that held by the Ku Klux Klan, a corrosive mindset that must step by hate-filled step lead to the same form of cowardly violence perpetrated by those hooded vigilantes. Thus, save you obtain and maintain the initiative by defining what comfortable cultural mindset must be overcome, what mature national mindset must take its place. You deny your posterity and the American people a wholesome national mindset worth striving for, and in accordance with the tenets of your faith. Proverbs 29 verse 18. Where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he. Stipulating, if you provide the vision, then the laws associated with said vision also transpire. In this it is also requisite you understand. If you look to overcome the acceptable weaknesses within your marriage, void of seeking to resolve the harsh issues associated with the sexual and addiction cultures, your efforts will garner you no lasting success. For whatsoever softness of heart you obtain via said efforts, you will forsake via refusing to fulfill your duty as a patriotic citizen to resolve said issues. For as noted, the only means by which you can deny truths that are rendered undeniable is via hardening your heart against said truths, which if you so do, then the hardness of heart you shall bring down upon yourself will limit the happiness you can obtain within your marriage to a greater degree than is presently the case. For if as a couple you have compassion one for another, by seeking to help one another see and overcome the acceptable weaknesses within your marriage, yet show no such compassion for your neighbor, then that which you have shown one another shall avail you nothing. Rather, in accordance with the tenets of your faith, it shall bear witness against you. For is this not the second great commandment of thy faith? Matthew chapter 29, verse 39. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. This being the case, in accordance with the tenets of your faith, how do you define thyself? Is this not also in accordance with the tenets of your faith, that you and your wife are one flesh? Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Therefore shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Now if you as a couple are one flesh, then how you love your spouse is how you love thyself. Thus, if you show compassion for your neighbor, in like manner as you show unto your spouse, then is the love between you as a couple solidified. But if you harden your heart and thereby refuse to show compassion unto your neighbor, the love between you as a couple must also wither. However, if you fulfill this law via helping your neighbor see and overcome the harsh issues associated with the sexual and addiction cultures, this must be the way forward whereby you can grow in greater happiness. For is it not evident to you, in having fulfilled the second great law, the means must be open unto you by which you might fulfill that which you term as the first great law? Matthew chapter 27, verse 37. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind.